We're back in the garden today and we have so much stuff planned today. We thought we'd bring you guys along. We wanted to show you where we're at and how the plants that we've already planted are doing. It's mid-May right now and we have a beautiful day. We've had unusually warm weather and unusually warm temperatures at night. Before we head into the garden, I was just going to mention a few of the fertilizers that I'm going to be using today and referring to. I really like Down to Earth, which is a granular fertilizer, and so what that means is it dissolves slowly into the soil. It's not like a traditional liquid fertilizer. We really love these. I have Fishbone Meal, BioLive, and BioFish. Those are my three favorites. We also have Alfalfa Meal, and Alfalfa Meal is a great source of nitrogen. We really like it. It's a little bit more cost effective than Blood Meal, which I also like. And Alfalfa Meal, it does break down into the soil really quickly, so it's really good for plants that you need nitrogen to act quickly. And lastly, I have some mycorrhiza, which is a fungal inoculant. We've used it for a few years, and this powder is a few years old, so I'm not even sure if it's effective anymore, but I'm still using it. It works by forming a relationship with the plant's roots, and it helps your plants do so much better. So we've always found that we really like to apply it to the roots when we're transplanting, and it doesn't work for all plants. I'd like to add that. It doesn't work for a lot of the cole crops, so just keep that in mind. We're gonna head in. So this is it. It is kind of a really big mess right now. It actually looks a lot better than it did. We still have a few snow patches here and about, but again, with the warm weather, it's just, that snow melted really fast. We do still have some frozen ground really deep down in these rows. I was just going to go over what we did with them last year, what's in them this year, the whole thing, what we've done so far. So this is our second year gardening here in Alaska. We established these rows out of lots of materials, and we started with a lot of manure. Most of it was broken down, so we had compost in here, we have spent barley, and we have lots of straw and hay. I think we have alfalfa hay in there. And so what we're kind of doing is just layering green and brown, and that's just going to all break down over time. It does take a lot longer because we're in Alaska and it freezes in the winter, but it works really well last year, and I'm hoping that it continues to work really well this year and for us in the future. So Eric and I went through in the fall and added pretty much broken down horse manure to all the rows, and then we added some hay on top. And so I added the hay because I was a little worried that come spring, a lot of the nutrients were going to leach into the ground, but that didn't, at least I don't think that happened. So next year I'm probably going to skip the mulch unless it's a plant that needs it. So this spring, when all of the snow melted, what we came in here and did was remove the mulch on some of the perennials just to see if they were still alive. But for the rest of the beds, we added more compost. We added some of our chicken litter that we had from the winter, and then we also added some soil that we had lying around. We had made our own soil, compost pile around here, and we added that on top, and it's all pretty dry right now, so that's what you're seeing. And the rows themselves are a lot bigger because of all these layers we're adding. So we're going really hardcore these first few years. We want to add lots of organic material because we just didn't have great soil to start with. In the future, I don't think we're going to be adding that much to the rows. We're going to come back outside in just a moment, but I want to show you guys the high tunnel. So all in all, everything with the high tunnel did really well over winter. We had a tiny bit of frost heaving on one of the front posts, a little bit of shifting, but really not bad. We're pretty excited. Everything seems to be in pretty much the same shape. This is what we've got so far. So a lot of random things happening in here. We totally switched it up this year. We're doing tomatoes in one of our rows, and I particularly chose the south one because I want them to ripen hopefully faster. That was where we had a big issue last year. Our peppers, we decided to make the whole middle row peppers. We have 80 peppers. It's crazy. I'm super excited about it. I think we have 60 tomatoes. A few of the other things we have in here are just the plants that aren't quite ready to be transplanted. So I have celery in here, tomatoes, basil, corn, eggplants. Even though it's been warm at night in the 40s, it's possible we're still going to dip down to the 30s, so I just want to kind of be cautious. These other plants have already been hardened off and had been out here for a while, so they're totally acclimated to the temperatures. The peppers and the tomatoes, we have lots of different varieties this year, and that is intentional for a few different reasons. Before we moved here, we kind of knew what seeds we liked and what varieties we liked, but here in Alaska it's just a totally different ball game. So I'm really interested in learning what grows the best and what seeds I can save, and then to do that I'm going to need to have just a few of the plants growing most likely. I don't think I should have 20 different tomatoes. So in the future I'd like to only grow maybe like 2 varieties of peppers or 2 varieties of tomatoes. But this year when we're doing our harvest, you're going to be seeing lots of different kinds, hopefully, because I think we have like over 12 kinds of tomatoes and a lot of, same thing for the peppers too. And with our tomatoes, we did about half paste tomatoes and the rest are more for just fresh eating, even though we'll probably end up using them for canning. We didn't have anywhere near as much as we wanted last year. And the biggest difference that we noticed with them was just the prolonged amount of time it took to ripen. So these tomatoes grew really big and, we trellised them and then they had all these fruit and they just took forever to turn red, which I think is a common thing for Alaska. So we kind of changed our plan for this year. I have lots of determinate kinds that I won't be needing to prune. And I also focused on varieties that mature really fast. So ones that mature anywhere from like 55 to 70, I think was some of the other ones I had. The tomatoes have been out here for probably maybe a little under 2 weeks, and so far they look pretty good. I totally had like a really rough going this year with our seedlings. As you guys remember, I left them out when it got 16 degrees. No good. I lost pretty much all of those plants that night. It wasn't our tomatoes and peppers though. But with our tomatoes, I made 2 mistakes. So I also left them out another night and I did lose some of them, and then I also over fertilized them. So I put some soluble fertilizer in the containers and it just didn't have enough area to break down. So some of them got some fertilizer burn, which is some of the yellow tips, but they're breaking past that, and it was a little discouraging for me because usually we get into the gardening season and there's a lot to experience and learn. Every year it's different, especially just here too, it's so extreme. But this year it feels like it's been exhaustive just to get to this point. Like, I'm shocked we even have tomato plants because I practically killed them before I could even get them in the ground. And I did want to give a special shout out to someone who was very kind and sent us a whole slew of peppers and tomatoes. So most of these were started from seed, but she sent us live transplants and they came and we planted them, and I'm so excited for them. So thank you very much to that person. I hope you hear this and know who you are. That really helped us out this year with all of my failures. As for the peppers, we have all of our hot peppers at the end, and then we work our way into some of the like roasting peppers, and the bell peppers are all the way down here. And we chose this row for the peppers because we are not going to trellis them. They don't need to be trellised. They are a little bit leggy. I started them early in the house this year. Last year I started them a little late. This year I started them a little early. Even though it was only like a 3 weeks difference, it made a huge difference. So we bought some bamboo sticks and we're going to be staking these because I do suspect they're going to need some support when they get taller and heavier with their fruit. Behind me we have some fruit trees. We're going to be planting fruit trees this year. Really excited about that. This is just a few of them. That's pretty much it for now. In the high tunnel, we are going to head back outside. We built this high tunnel a year ago, so it has been awesome having it this year. It doesn't hold that heat at night that much, but during the day, it can get scorching in there. I think with this weather we've had, it's probably been like 90 to 100 in there. So I open up the door and keep it probably in the 70 to 80 range now. This row over here is our mint and our asparagus. And the mint did perennialize. I was hoping it would. We had snow over here not that long ago and it doesn't get as much sun as the rest of the garden. So the ground over here is still defrosting a little bit, but I did see a little asparagus starting. I'll show you guys where I found it. I believe we planted Jersey Supreme, and that is a baby spear coming through. And there's a few more in there. So that does mean they overwintered, and they should for the zone we're in, but you just never know. So with Asparagus Crowns, you usually have to wait until the 3rd year to harvest from them. And I can tell that's going to be the case with these ones. They're probably going to shoot up pretty thin and not that many, so we'll wait until year 3 or year 4 to harvest from them. This is a lilac bush we had at the end, and it overwintered and has its new buds. They're all swollen, so I'm pretty excited about that as well. This is another row that we have in the garden, and we have a lot of perennials in here. Honeyberries, a rose bush, and raspberries, and a really cool onion plant at the end. And those all overwintered. They're all alive and looking great. Our strawberries did well. I even had a few flowers like bee balm and catnip survive. I wasn't quite expecting that. And I think our sole comfrey plant even survived too, which is very exciting. Let's walk over to the front and check out the herbs that survived, and I can grab some pruners. So being our first year with the garden overwintering, I didn't really know what was going to survive or not. And chives pulled through, the mint pulled through that I talked about, and our tarragon did wonderful. So I think tarragon's going to be a staple for us because it just grows so well and prolific here. I didn't even have to try hard to overwinter it. And I think our oregano survived. I see some new growth on that. Thyme, sage, and lavender, surprisingly, the lavender didn't survive. So I think I didn't really expect those two. They're not zone 3, and that's what zone we're in. But I figured if I mulch them really deep, who knows? And it didn't work. So that's okay. I did start new herbs of those. This one did survive. This is a creeping thyme. I don't know why that is, but those ones did make it through. In the future, I want to try and grow the herbs that are the easiest for us to grow. Rosemary and lavender are a little bit finicky. And if rosemary doesn't overwinter, you know, it's not really worth it to me to grow when I can just kind of replace it with something like tarragon. Not quite the same, but it's comparable. And lavender really needs to perennialize for you to get those flowers. So that's something I'm going to keep trying on that one, and hopefully we'll see if I can get it to survive. So what we're doing is removing the old canes and thinning out our raspberries. This variety is Latham, I believe, and it is a summer bearing variety. So what that means is there are canes from last year that look like this that fruited already, and they are not going to be providing any more fruit. So they need to be removed. And it's easy to tell the difference from something like this that's got brown skin, and it looks a lot different than this older one. So I removed all these, and we also thinned some of the thinner scraggly looking ones out. From what I've read, you only want to keep about 3 to 5, and I have 6, so I'm getting a little greedy. We're gonna keep moving on. This was our first time trying this variety, and it was freaking delicious. It tasted like candy. They were so good. Raspberries do grow here in the wild, but in our particular area we haven't really found any, so I am pretty happy that we ended up planting these. They're doing really well so far. So this one's really thin, so I'm pruning this one out. And I did want to mention, it's a little confusing, but with these summer bearing varieties, these canes were actually produced last year, so these overwintered, but they're still, you know, really clean looking compared to the others that were 2 years old. So these ones are now going to be producing fruit this year, but I am still thinning certain ones because if I leave all of them, then it's not going to be able to put that much energy into growing and into the fruit itself. So we're not going to ask the plant to do too much. These are hascaps, and their buds are swelling and they're starting to leaf out. I'm really excited for these. We got just a few last year. Really cool flavor, almost like a grape-ish flavor. Grape blueberry, think that, like that. Thin skin, but really nice, like soury tasting berry. They look good. They maybe sustained a little bit of damage from snow, so that's what I'm removing. And this is our Rose rugosa on the end. She's doing great, and from what I've read, she's probably going to try to take over the whole garden. So I'm excited for that day because I really want roses. This is our strawberry row. We planted these crowns last year, and what we did was we removed the mulch off earlier this year, and Eric clipped off some of the runners that had rooted, and he put them at the end. So we turned the whole row into a strawberry row, and I'm going to fertilize them with some bone meal or fish bone meal. And so this is the new growth. You can see that nice new leaf coming up. Probably not all of them made it, but it looks like most of them did. So we got a lot of runners last year that we left, so we're gonna have lots of little small plants starting up. And this one is a mother plant. Okay, so we're just watering this in. I wanted to mention, if you're not familiar with strawberry plants, what I'm referring to when I say mother and runner is the bigger plants are the original crowns that we planted, and they send off runners or new plants. A lot of them, if you let them, and they'll actually root, and so that takes a lot of the energy away from the mother plant, which most people grow strawberries for berries, am I right? So our plan for this row is in probably about 2 years, we're gonna actually in the spring come through and dig everything up, and we're gonna replant probably, you know, just runners, because the moms at some point do get exhausted, and that way at that point we can add some more material to this row. Right now I can't really add anything. I have added just a little bit of new compost, but not very much because I don't want to bury the existing plants. We've moved on to our garlic row. We planted this in October and we mulched it very heavily, and they are popping up. They actually started popping up about 2 weeks ago. Every single clove is popping up and turning into a bulb. And that's really exciting for us. We grew garlic in Oregon, but this is Alaska, so it was a little bit different. In Oregon, when you grow it, it actually pops up in the winter, so you can see it all winter long. And me and Eric kept, you know, randomly looking over to the garden when it had like 4 feet of snow and be like, oh yeah, there's garlic in there. So it did pop up. I'm really excited about that. And with garlic, what we have always done is I hit it really hard in the summer with nitrogen, blood meal and alfalfa meal. Usually back to back, I'll do it like every 2 weeks, probably for the first month. And I do that because it generates a lot of that green growth, or it encourages the plant to put on a lot of green growth. And garlic's bulb is actually related to its leafy growth. So the more leafy growth you get up top, you're actually going to get a bigger, nicer sized bulb. So that is why we are putting nitrogen on it now. I've got some blood meal here. I like to save this for things that really need nitrogen, like celery, corn. Those are things that are pretty demanding plants in my opinion. And I even have liquid fertilizers to put on those ones as well, to give them that, you know, extra boost they need throughout the season. There's a little bit of wind today, so some of this is going away, which is okay. This alfalfa meal is, we buy it in a 50-pound bag, and it's really affordable compared to the blood meal, so you can be pretty generous. And you do need more of it to be kind of equivalent to that, because it's not, doesn't have as much nitrogen value. When we planted these garlic, we had just put down our goose and duck and chicken litter that we had before the fall, so there's already a lot of manure in there. This is composted goat manure that we got this year, and I'm super excited about that. This is from an animal that you don't really have to worry about it burning your plants, even though this is already broken down, so we don't really have to worry about it. And I also put some spent barley. All right, we finished up with our garlic. We have, I think, about 6 different varieties of hardneck garlic in here. Some of them are new to us. For the most part, these grow better in the north where we're at, and they send off scapes, which is another edible part of the plant. It's getting pretty windy today, so we are going to finish up by planting a whole bunch of our brassicas and greens, and we will pick back up with you guys tomorrow. right, we're back in the garden. It's the next day and we got a lot accomplished yesterday and today. So we're just gonna go over quickly what we have in both these rows to my left and right. It's mainly our brassicas. We have cabbage, kohlrabi, we have some cauliflower and broccoli. And then further down the row, we have the rest of our greens. So Swiss chard, mustards, lettuces, spinach, all that kind of stuff all the way to the end. And then we have Brussels sprouts, collards, kale, and then we have peas on the end that we're gonna be trellising. Eric and I went through, we fertilized things lightly, and we also watered everything already. So we are going to hop over to our onion bed. This is our onion row, and it's actually going to have shallots and leeks in it too. I've already started most of the onions and the leeks in this row. The leeks are down here at the end, and I have them separated because we're going to be hilling those up as they grow. I want to blanch the stalk so we get that nice white stalk when they grow. And with the onions, we don't do that. You know, I just plant them right above their roots so the bulb can grow out above the soil. We left quite a bit more to plant, so I'm going to head down there and show you guys what we have to do. In front of me, I have 3 different ways that onions are planted. And the first is some onions and shallots that we started from seed. So I left these over to show you guys what that looks like. I'm gonna be separating these today and starting them. This is my favorite way to grow onions. You get the most for your money because you buy a seed packet, which I mean can range anywhere from probably 99 cents to $5, and you get hundreds of onions for that. It's just a little slower. You have to start them earlier, and they are a little finicky sometimes with germination. This next way of getting onions is, I believe they're called onion starts, and they are onions that have been started and then at some point they were shipped, and usually you buy them in a dry bundle. What I did was I put them in soil just to make sure that they could start working on their roots, but usually when you buy them their roots are dried up and shriveled. So this is a way that we've also planted onions. It's not as economical as the seeds. It costs us I think $5 per each bundle, which only came with like 10 to 12 onions. And lastly, we are trying onion bulbs. So I've never done it this way, and these are actual little bulbs. We paid $3 for 80 of these, so really good deal. Normally I would just do seeds, but I had some issues with our onions after they germinated, and I was a little afraid we weren't gonna have enough. We like a lot of onions. So I'm kind of excited this year to see how all of these do, and we'll keep you guys informed, you know, what does better. Usually these and the bulbs will probably get bigger. That would be my guess. I like to put a lot of nitrogen on our onions when they're growing. That helps them build a lot of that top leafy growth, which will in turn mean a bigger bulb. We're gonna go ahead and get started and finish planting our onion row. So we are growing tons of different varieties of onions this year. I'm really excited about that. We're gonna try lots of different new ones for us and see how they do up here. I was really impressed with a red onion we grew last year. It was called Red Bull, and we still have that onion. I mean, it's super cool. We're probably gonna have that onion for another month or so or 2 until we run out of it. So that storage on that one is like close to a year, which is awesome. So when you're growing onions, one thing to pay attention to is where you live and the variety you're growing, because there are different categories of onions. There's short day, neutral, and long day. Because we're in the northern part of the world hemisphere, we use long day ones, and that's because we have longer light hours. So for us, those onions work the best for forming the type of bulb with responding to those light hours. If you're in the south, you would do a short day because you don't have as long of daylight hours, and you will get better bulbs, bigger bulbs from those types of onions. And also the opposite's kind of true. If we were to try to grow a short day onion, it may work, but we probably wouldn't get very big onions because they're triggered to make their bulb basically at shorter light hours. And so we're already at, I mean, I think we're close to like 18 light hours. So that's just already in the long day category. So it probably really wouldn't work for us. And I know that for me is kind of confusing to understand, but the way to think of it is that the onions need time to grow first before they put energy into their bulbs. So they have to put a lot of energy into the shoots themselves, or the leaves, and then they start to form their bulbs and they get bigger, and then there's the process of curing them. So these are some of our shallots. I thought it would be wise to start our onions in these trays this year. And what I ended up doing was I ended up overwatering them a little bit because I didn't really get the concept that more water was sitting at the bottom of it. So I think that's where I went wrong with some of our onions. So we don't have a lot of shallots for this year, but that's okay. I'm just happy to have some. One of our favorite onions last year too was Walla Walla. It's a sweet onion. It doesn't store for that long. I think ours stored for maybe 3-4 months, but it is so good. It's a white onion and you can almost eat it raw. It's that good. It's really, really tasty. We finally finished planting all of the onions. It took forever. They're like little tiny blades of grass, some of them. I have just a few more bunching onions to put in, and this whole row worked out perfectly. I can't believe it worked out as well as this. But it just all fit in here like it was supposed to. Now we're going to fertilize with Alfalfa Meal, and our onions, we've been growing onions for a few years. We have found the nitrogen helps them a lot, and I didn't really know that until I had spoken to someone back at Territorial Seed Company, and she had turned me on to that. And once we started doing that, we started getting bigger onions. They'd cure correctly and all of that. So if you struggle with onions at all, maybe try adding some nitrogen.
So we're pretty much done planting what we're going to plant today. We did end up, I don't know if you caught it in the last video, we were having some troubles with our little corn low tunnel, and we got a few comments on adding little adapters and just adding on some extra pipe. So that's what we did. We added on 2 feet extra to each one of these, and this thing turned out great. We just need to put some plastic on that, and then that'll be ready for our corn. And one last thing we want to work on today is we want to get a trellis built for our squash row, which is going to go right here. That way some of the varieties that need to climb are going to have a nice trellis to climb up, and we're going to get started on that next. Seriously, hard work.
You think I could do it?
Yeah.
Have you asked yourself what you're going to do when you're 80?
Not this. Alright, so that's it for the squash trellis, and I believe we are pretty much done in the garden for today.
Yeah, like Eric said, this is going to be for our squash. So they're going outside this year. We're going to see how it goes. We have lots of different varieties. The plan is either to put some plastic over the lower beam and kind of keep the plants warm that way, or we are going to be putting plastic on the mound directly and heat up the soil. I think we may be going with that second option, but we still have some time to decide. We hope you guys enjoyed this video, and we're going to try and do quite a few more gardening videos this season and try to just throw in some tips and things that we've learned. Obviously, every year brings new challenges, so I'm sure we'll have a lot to learn again this year. So keep an eye out for those videos, and we will catch you guys next time.